Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and welcome to my world of cosplay shenaniganery. Saturday, March 22nd, I went to Colorado Anime Fest in 2025. I had originally planned to make a vlog, however, I only have 1 minute and 56 seconds of video footage because I was told repeatedly in just about every single location in the hotel and convention center that I was not allowed to film there. Because of that, we are getting a story time with some little clips thrown in here and there wherever I do have footage. And I will put timestamps down below in case anybody wants to jump around in the story time. To start this story time, we have my transportation struggles, because there were a lot of those, unfortunately. If you notice that I am twitching a little more than I normally do in videos, that's because I was seriously overstimulated at the convention. I normally only go for 1 day for most conventions because it is way too much for my sensory needs to handle. It's a lot of noise, there's a costume on me, there's makeup on me, there's lots of light and movement, and it's really too much. So if I'm twitching out like Scrap from Ice Age, that's why. I got up at 6 a.m. to be able to catch a 7:30 a.m. bus. I would have to take 2 buses and then an Uber to get to the convention. But my first bus was 15 minutes late, which meant that when I got to the station to get onto my second bus, I had to wait about another 20 minutes before I could get on a bus because the bus I was going to get on had already left. It was absolutely freezing that early in the morning. I was only wearing my t-shirt, jeans, and Grell coat, thinking that I would be on the bus all morning instead of standing at the station for nearly a half hour, freezing my ass off. And a little note about myself to make this story make a little more sense. I have a lot of physical, medical issues that cause me to have other problems outside of just my diagnoses. One of those is that it is physically unsafe for me to have to hold it for the bathroom for more than 2 hours. Even 1 hour is kind of pushing it. So to have to ride 2 buses and then have to wait an extra half hour for the next cycle of buses, I was suffering. I was in severe physical pain and could not go to the bathroom because the first station I was at, they have bathrooms, but they're always closed because anytime they open them, they get absolutely demolished by the crazy homeless people who are around that area. Now, I'm not going to generalize for every bus station and every single homeless person that the largest majority of homeless people around that one station have lost their freaking minds. And you'll get to hear more on that for my ride home. So I was standing at my first bus station going, I am so freaking cold and I really gotta pee and I am dying and suffering and is this convention gonna be worth it? It better be! Finally, the next bus cycle started. I got to the convention. No.
Always. No. Never.
Finally, the next bus cycle started. I got to the next station, and then I could either take 3 or 4 separate little bus trips to get to the convention, or I could take an Uber for 20 bucks. I opted for Uber, and normally in Denver, you can get an Uber pretty dang quickly. Ubers are crawling around absolutely everywhere. But I had to wait 10 minutes for an Uber to show up for me. What the hell? When I arrived at my next station, I was already late for the con and knew I was missing out on the panel that I'd originally wanted to start with. So I thought, let's go ahead and go to the bathroom while we're here. This station had a decent bathroom. I didn't know where it was. I started following the signs for the station of saying bathroom this way, but it was really hard to tell if the sign was saying it was upstairs or down the hall. I walked around for 20 minutes trying to find the bathroom because there was hardly any staff around since it was so early in the morning. Finally, I found the bathroom. The security guard who unlocks the bathroom for you as well as keeps an eye on how many people are in the bathroom or if they're being troublemakers looked at me and said, "Good morning, would you like to use the restroom?" And I said, "Yes, please." And then he walked away, and he was gone for about 40 seconds. I did not say anything, I did not do anything, because if I had, it would not have been nice and I would have been going to jail instead of a convention. I was in so much physical pain that I felt like I was about to die. Finally, he came back and he went, "Good morning! Would you like to use the restroom right now?" "Yes! Please! Right now!" The guy unlocked the bathroom for me. I ran in there, finally got to use the restroom, and then I thought, you know, I'm already late for the convention. Let's go ahead and get the majority of my cosplay on while I am in a bathroom that I don't have to wait in line for. Because if I wait until I get to the convention, I'll likely have to wait in a line for the bathroom, get changed, come out, and still have to deal with a number of things before I properly start enjoying the convention. Saving only the wig to be put on at the convention so I'm not getting crazy looks out on the streets of Denver, and that means I am less likely to have to wait in line for the bathroom at the con because I'm not using a stall. Finally, the Uber picked me up, took me to the convention, and before I put my wig on, I walked around the badge tables to make sure I knew which table I wanted to go to once I was in full cosplay. But then a nice staff lady in a witch hat asked me which version of a badge that I needed. And I showed her my QR code, she sent me to the right spot, so I went ahead and got my badge before I got in full cosplay. Once badged, I went into the bathroom, got my wig on, and as soon as I was in full cosplay, somebody walked behind me and went, "Ooh, nice Grell." I don't see him cosplayed too often anymore. And I was like, yes! That was the plan. With cosplaying Rel, that was kind of the idea. I was hoping that I was a popular enough character to get attention without it being a character that everybody else was also cosplaying. Walking out of the bathroom, I ran into this person and their bestie. Shut up! And I was walking directly behind the person in the white coat. So as I'm walking behind them, their bestie in front of them went, "Dude, did you even see who was behind you?" And the person in the white coat turns around and goes, "Oh my god, Grill!" And I went, and they went, and it was a very cute little interaction. I continued walking through the convention just to get my bearings because I'd never been at this convention center before. When I reached a little lounge area where I could set my bag down and get properly adjusted to put the keychains and pins that I was selling on my bag as well as my little sign saying how much everything is, I found an arcane group. Now, I know a whole bunch of people would think that I'd be super into arcane, but it's just not my cup of tea. However, the cosplayers do an amazing job, and I love this trio here, so I had to take a picture. And I was gifted some really cute little items. I got a blue sphere and a 3D printed gold coin as soon as I got to the con, so that made me very happy. They also loved that I was handing out my business cards with dum-dums and stickers attached to them. They also had a friend chatting with them that was cosplaying Haruhi from Orin Host Club, however they walked away before I could get a picture and I was a little sad. While I was trying to get my bag situated, there was this big group of fursuiters who were taking a picture with a cosplayer, so I took advantage of that moment and took pictures of the fursuiters as well. And I have never been to a convention where fursuiters walk around with their heads off as much as this one had. Because I know a lot of people have an issue with ruining the magic, but I also understand that sometimes that head needs to come off, especially if you have sensory needs. Although it was interesting how often I saw them with their heads off when ruining the magic is something that a lot of people are worried about. After interacting with the arcane group, I scooped up my bags and headed towards the Maid Cafe to get even more of a bearing on what this convention center looks like. I chatted with the maids, we got some pictures, and we traded cards. That was fun. I got a couple pictures of an Osmodius cosplayer. The fraying raw edges on this costume bothered me really bad, but I was impressed to see a fursuit head of Osmodius at this convention. Now I have this shot of me walking through the convention halls.
How'd you do your wings?
It's all a foam.
It's what?
This was one of the moments when I was told I was not allowed to film. I was holding the camera right here at my chest to kind of get my eye level of walking through the halls so that you could get all the cosplayers going past me. While I am doing this, a staff member went, "Oh, sweetheart, you're not allowed to film here." Walking through a random hall in the convention. Okay, put camera away. I love this Spider-Man cosplayer. I only got a couple pictures, but his poses that I saw him do for other people were absolutely adorable. He knew exactly how to look like a cartoon. And I was very often catching photos of cosplayers when the professional photographers were taking pictures of them, because I so regularly got told I was not allowed to film that I just kind of followed the professional photographers who were getting paid to work at the convention so that I could get some pictures. I really enjoyed this cosplayer who meshed Lucifer and Alistair together. That was adorable. And the other two of the trio were too cute as well. I filmed in the video game room a couple of times, even getting these awesome pictures of this Professor Stein cosplay. I have been so sad that my Professor Stein cosplay has been missing, and I told them about that. And Professor Stein's friend said, "Well, you look amazing as Grell." And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you, but this is a 12-year-old cosplay." Technically, Professor Stein is older, but but during my second time of filming the game room at this convention, I was later told that I was not allowed to film in the game room either. That one I understand a little bit more. There's a lot of copyright material in there, and maybe you don't want all the copyright material filmed. A couple other cosplayers I met in the game room were Robin Hood and Maid Marian. They were so freaking cute, I love them. And Robin Hood gave me an adorable sticker that I am going to keep forever because I love it, I love it, I love it. I also handed them the Dum Dum and sticker with my business card, and Robin Hood told me I was spoiling everybody with giving them all the goodies. After this, I also had some other people come up to me later going, "We heard you were handing out stickers and Dum Dums," and I was like, yes, I am. Following these interactions, I went to the Artist Alley for the first point in the day. The very first booth I went to had a whole bunch of Pokemon related things, which was amazing because I always look for Haunter related merch when I go to conventions. Haunter is my brother's favorite Pokemon, and it's a lot harder to find merch of his because Gengar is way more popular. So I'm always super excited to find Haunter at conventions. However, I thought I saw Haunter in their booklet of options, could not, when they said, "Oh wait, that's Gengar." So I got myself a Mimichu, and they said, "Go ahead and come back in a couple of hours and we'll see if we can find Haunter during that time, because I feel like we should have one." I came back later, they didn't find him. I was like, worth a shot, and continued my shopping. After looking through the Pokemon, I went to a booth with a whole bunch of prints, and they had my Lord Shishomaru up in their display. Yes! I started flipping through their booklet to see what the smallest size was, because that was $10 and I felt like that was the only thing that was going to safely fit in my backpack without getting crushed. I paid the $10 for a Shishomaru and went to take a picture of their QR code because they didn't have a more recent business card. This was another moment where I was told I wasn't allowed to take pictures, and that makes sense. Not taking pictures in the Artist Alley is very common. But then the business owner said, "Oh no, she's just making sure she's got my QR code." And the staff member went, "Oh, okay, that's fine. You go ahead and take your picture of the QR code, but nothing else." I was like, okay, cool, great, love that. In taking time to put my bag down again to show off my Mimichu pin, I went ahead and took some selfies as Grell, realizing that I didn't have any pictures of my updated version of Grell after 12 years. Sadly, even though I put all the pins and keychains on my bag and I had a sign out saying how much they were, nobody made any purchases from me, which is really odd because I've been able to sell keychains and pins from my backpack before. I even had a couple people come up to me and be like, "Ooh, I didn't see these pins or keychains in the artist alley. Which dealer are they from?" And I'd say, "Ah, I made them myself. It's $10 per..." Where'd they go? This regularly happened at the convention. I would be mid-sentence or mid-conversation with somebody, and they would just walk away. It happened repeatedly. Oftentimes, the other person would be mid-sentence, and they'd drift off. This is only my 4th convention, but I've also gone to a lot of other costume-related events, and this is the first time this has happened so many times. This CL was the first Black Butler cosplayer that I ran into while running around the convention. They told me that they'd also seen a couple other CLs, and later on I saw them again, and they told me they saw 2 Grells. And I later also got told by other cosplayers that these other cosplayers were seeing 2 other Grells running around. These Grells weren't together, they were in separate groups, but I never saw them. I was also told multiple times that I had the best wig out of all the Grells. Thank you, that wig was only $20 and I only styled it a tiny bit. I was also told that I had the best costume out of all the Grells that people had been seeing because I was the only Grell wearing the red coat. The other 2 Grells were really dressed down and hadn't done makeup, so I got some compliments on my eye makeup as well. Plenty of people really liked the mask too, so that I had the teeth without having to shove some teeth in my face for the whole day. We got some more pictures of some badass cosplayers. For this Vocaloid duo, they actually had a massive Vocaloid group, and the one time I asked for a picture where the whole group was together, they went, "Oh, we're missing one of the twins. We can't do a picture right now." I said, "Okay, I'll find you guys later," and then only found the twins later. The rest of the Vocaloid crew were gone. At least I got a picture of the twins. This white fursuiter was amongst a group of a whole bunch of DC superheroes, so it was kind of funny to see this fluffy, cute cat thing following around Batman. And they were hanging on each other quite a bit, so when I told my brother about this, my brother was like, "Yeah, but we know how Batman feels about cats." My second trip to the artist alley was insane. The line was 2 layers thick, and the staff member that was choosing for people either on the left line or the right line to go next kept choosing the right line, and I was in the left side. So all of us kept going, "You keep skipping us, hello!" And he kept going, "Right side, right side, right side, go." I think he was doing that just to be annoying. Outside of the artist alley, there was this really fun cosplayer who was playing a recorder to a whole bunch of fandom-related theme songs. I initially heard him playing Kim Possible, and then the Pokemon theme song, as well as Do You Want to Build a Snowman? He was fun, loved him. His main job was to make sure everybody who was going into the artist alley had a badge. The line also wrapped all the way around the wall to the other side of the artist alley. It got ridiculously long. Although, when I was in the artist alley first thing in the morning and there was no line, it was ungodly crowded in there, and I had to leave so that I wouldn't have a panic attack. But when I came back and had to wait in line, the artist alley was not nearly as crowded. They were actually controlling the numbers in there by that point, and it was slightly breathable in there by the second time round. I finished my shopping, so I'll have a little haul for you. Then leaving the artist alley, I spotted another CL. So I was chasing them down because this CL had an Undertaker with them, and they had a little wagon and had the Undertaker's giant staff, and I was like, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, I need a picture with them." But I could see exactly where they were running towards, and their cosplays definitely said competition to me. So it made sense that we ran all the way to the competition table. They got signed in, and then we started chatting. I told them about how I was sad that my favorite Undertaker cosplayer couldn't join me for the convention at T-Rev Vlogs, And this Undertaker was like, oh, I'll be your Undertaker understudy for today. That's fine, I'm good with that. I chatted with them for a while, and then I met this Evie. CL and the Undertaker and Belly Dancing Evie were the only couple of people that I actually had real conversations with. The largest majority of the rest of the conversations that I had were because I became part of a panel. And that's because I knew enough about cosplay that when the panel leader ran out of things to say, they'd ask if the audience had anything to add. Me in Hermione mode. I really did love this Nightcrawler cosplayer. I told them that I was still working on my own Nightcrawler cosplay, and they're like, yeah, well, I'm still working on mine too. So I asked them, done enough for the con? And they went, yeah. Don't worry about it, I did that for my Fizzarolli cosplay too. By this point, I made it to the upstairs. Most people were avoiding the upstairs because it had these massive windows that were making it super hot up there. But I found myself a cozy little corner just in the shade away from the windows where only I would fit because I'm so tiny. From that vantage point, I could film the costume contest, people signing up to be part of the costume contest, and run, Tylee, run! I don't know where she was going, but she was part of helping run the costume contest, so she was probably dealing with something important. While I was chatting with the CL and Undertaker that were going to be part of the costume contest, the people working the costume contest started trying to get me to sign up for the costume contest. And I was like, oh, no, heck no. This cosplay is not competition ready. And they're like, you kidding? You look like you go with this group. I thought you were part of this group. And I was like, nah. We just met each other. We've been chatting. Even though we get along really well, we just met each other 2 minutes ago. Also, this costume is completely thrifted, except for the wig. It is not handmade, it is not competition ready. If I was doing a competition piece, it would be hand sewed, hand dyed, cross stitch, embroidery, all that good stuff. I would have weapons and props and everything going on. Because if I'm going into a competition, I'm going in seriously. And they go, oh wow, okay, you do take your competition seriously. I was like, yeah. This ain't it. Also, everyone who wanted a picture with me were either Black Butler cosplayers themselves, or they were parents saying they wanted the picture for their kids. And I often asked them, how old is your kid? And they regularly said that the child was under 10 years old. Them being a fan of Black Butler before they've even hit double digits is not okay. The show is essentially PG-13, maybe a little higher depending on the episode, and it very much feels like these idiot parents who are allowing children to watch Has-Been Hotel just because it's animated, and we have enough adult animation in the mainstream these days to know better. The Sonic crew that sat down next to me for lunch were sitting directly in that window spot, and they were all cooking and started complaining about it, and then they turned and looked at me asking me why I wasn't complaining that it was so hot. And then Shadow went, oh, they're in the shade! The one little spot of shade that's up here! And I moved my glasses down and went, that was exactly the point. And some guy with a Studio Ghibli style Hawaiian shirt walked past us and went, that's the smart one right there. Yep, that's the smart one. Just before I went to my first panel of the day, because I missed out on the couple that I really wanted to go to, I spotted an Elvira. After Elvira had retired the character, I was really sad. And even more so that I see fewer and fewer cosplayers wearing her costume. I might have to do one sometime just because I miss seeing her. So I actually ran to catch up with this Elvira because she was headed somewhere. But I managed to catch up with her, and I asked her for a picture. Told her I should probably cosplay Elvira sometime, and she's like, ah, Amazon. I went, yeah, not how I cosplay usually. More so me. Ah, thrift stores. Eventually made it into my first panel. The panel was called something to the effect of cosplay with sensory issues. And I did film this little bit, but it felt like as soon as I hit record, the Katara running the panel started gesturing to me to not film. Not being allowed to film at a panel? I've heard of that when there's super important famous people that they don't want you posting stuff because they want you paying to go talk to the famous people. But I hadn't heard of not being allowed to film at every single panel, which is what happened for me at this convention. Although I did really enjoy this panel. Poor Katara had brought her laptop, which she said was from 2008, and it was not working, so she didn't have her slideshow up to be able to show us the pictures of the cosplays that she was talking about. Because of her autism, she was very qualified to talk about having sensory needs while in cosplay, talking about how she made her Katara costume more comfortable and less form-fitting, so it wouldn't bother her or feel itchy. And as soon as she ran out of things to say, because she no longer had her slideshow for the pictures to be able to take up some of the time, she looked around the audience and went, okay, does anybody else have anything to say? Because that was supposed to be an hour and 15-minute slideshow, except I talk really fast when I'm nervous, and it's only been 20 minutes now. So I raised my hand because my Grell cosplay, I have done a lot of things to change up so that it'd be more comfortable for me. So I jumped up in front of the whole audience and went through my whole costume explaining how I changed things up so that they're not bothering my sensory issues. So that panel essentially turned into a discussion because after I sat down, there were a whole bunch of other people with little tips and tricks. There was a Homestuck cosplayer directly behind me, and they and I ended up having like a conversation between ourselves where everybody could hear, because we're both also fursuiters on top of cosplayers, so we were including fursuit tricks into cosplay, like wearing moisture wicking Under Armour under your cosplays. They also highly complimented me wearing the mask because they have immune system issues and always have to wear a mask for their cosplays. So they really like seeing people use masks as a fashion accessory and not just because they have to wear it for their medical needs. One cosplayer who got up to go to the restroom during this panel actually dropped her glove as she was going out the door, so I went and scooped it up and handed it to her, and she's like, oh, I'm coming back! And I was like, how was I supposed to know that? I just saw you run out the door and you dropped your glove. I was making sure you didn't lose a glove. Following that panel would have been a wig styling panel. While I would have loved to stay for that, I was a little afraid that they were going to be using a lot of hairspray during that panel, and I didn't want to chance me having an allergic reaction and having to go to the hospital. So I went to the K-pop dance room instead. This room was not nearly big enough for how many people were in there. And even though I only have 1 minute and 56 seconds of footage, I love that I managed to get one of the times that I was told I'm not allowed to film on camera at this part. I'll just have a couple of screenshots where you can't really see what's going on here so that I'm not breaking any rules, but here's the audio.
Yeah, we're not allowed to.
This was a cosplayer telling me I was not allowed to film. And she was a grown-ass woman who would not stop saying, sorry, 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 you're not allowed to film, I'm sorry, they told us we're not allowed to film, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Finally I said, stop saying sorry, you didn't do it. After she told me we weren't allowed to film, I turned around and saw that there were about 4 staff behind me, so I went and asked one of them, and they're like, oh no, you're not allowed to film. That makes a little more sense for the K-pop dance room, because there's copyright music playing, and also some people may not want to be filmed while they're dancing. However, a bunch of people, all along the lineup of people watching, had their phones out. I wonder if people at this convention just had something against me having a vlogging camera out instead of using my phone. I don't know what the frick it was about that they didn't want me filming every time I turned a corner, but being told that I was not allowed to film every time I turned around was driving me bananas. While in the K-pop room, I also saw some cosplayers that I knew. I don't know them super well, but I've seen them at almost every single convention I've gone to. One of the queens, she is in a wheelchair, and she will jump up and do that K-pop dance as hard as she can, but then her body will start giving out on her and she has to sit in a wheelchair again. I greatly appreciate the passion that she puts into those dances, even though her body very much disagrees with it. I don't know exactly what medical issues cause her to not have a whole lot of physical strength, but she is an amazing dancer despite those issues. The other cosplayer who was her friend, I'm gonna guess, was Mori from Orin Host Club. They were wearing an Orin Host Club uniform and they were using their natural hair, which was black, and it wasn't slicked back and it was left a bit messy. So Mori's my best guess. Mori recognized me. I was standing off to the side and she just finished dancing, started heading into the crowd to get her water bottle, stopped, did a double take on me, and went, "Wait, Fan Expo last year." And I went, "Yeah? Do you know how I could tell?" "How?" "Your height." "Well, I am only 5 feet tall." "Me too!" It's also the way you carry yourself. Most people usually stand with their backs hunched. You stand up perfectly straight and you usually put your hands behind your back. When you were Edward Scissorhands, you were still doing that. So I just recognized Edward Scissorhands, who stood like that, very quickly. And that interaction was awesome. I love when people recognize me from other conventions, especially when I'm not wearing the same costume. But multiple people have told me that they usually recognize me because of my height and because of how I carry myself. What I'm usually told is that they recognize more so my energy because I carry myself very tall because of all my physical medical issues so that my body hurts less. This also gives me more height and you get to see my full 5 feet. When I told my mom the story and I said that Mori told me they recognized me because of my height, my mom's like, "Or the lack thereof." Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Love you too. And before I left, I got one final picture of this cosplayer. I loved her armor and sword, and I could tell everything was handmade. It looked amazing, but I was gonna go. After being told so many times that I was not allowed to film, even though I was trying to make a vlog, I was exhausted. I also was tired because I joined in a lot on a few of the K-pop dances, so I thought I might as well leave while I'm still having a little bit of fun before I get too tired and I snap at somebody else for telling me I'm not allowed to film. 'Cause what the heck else are you supposed to do at a convention? You're kind of expected to take pictures of the cosplayers, right? It was with this cosplayer that I was told I was not allowed to take pictures in the hotel lobby. What the frickin' heck? Not allowed to take pictures in the lobby, even though we pulled off to the side and we're going at an angle so that people could still go through the doorway. It wasn't like they even just asked us to move aside a little more. No. Not allowed to take pictures in the lobby. I swear people were putting on those COAF t-shirts for staff and pretending to be staff just to be annoying. Because I wasn't the only one being told I wasn't allowed to film. Although I had to deal with it a lot because I was trying to make a vlog, so I did have my camera out quite often. Even when I wasn't recording anything, I would very quickly be told I wasn't allowed to film at this panel, in this room, around this corner, in the lobby. Holy crapola. I went into the con bathroom, got changed, got back into my daily clothes, and skedaddled. I walked over to the nearest coffee place so that the Uber would have an easier time finding me, because a whole bunch of people were getting ready to leave the con, or were coming into the con because the costume competition was going to be starting soon. You were either leaving to get away from the crowds, like I was, or coming in because you were part of the costume competition, or wanted to watch it. I really wanted to watch it, but there was no way I was staying till 9. I had the Uber take me all the way to the very first bus station with the broken bathrooms. That way I wouldn't have to be on buses as long. Something went very wrong. The Uber app told the driver to take a detour. It was a 15-minute detour that we did not actually need to take. And the Uber driver felt so terrible for going the wrong direction because the app told them to. They had major apologies for me, and they even handed me a crisp $20 bill in cash as an apology. I did give them a $3 tip because I felt bad for them as well with the app not working. But it was nice that even though I didn't make any money at the con with my keychains, I still made money that day somehow. Because my transport was, again, 15 minutes late, I missed the bus that I was hoping to take. And I would have to wait a full hour for the next bus cycle to start by this point. Because later in the day, there are fewer and fewer buses. As I said before, the homeless people around this station are not okay. I am friends with some of the homeless people that are more within my local area. Not all homeless people are like this, okay? I was standing there waiting for my next bus cycle to start, and I was texting my mom to let her know that I was going to be home an hour later than planned. She texted back and said, you know what? I'm gonna come pick you up because this is just way too long of a wait, and you've been dealing with way too much transportation trouble this far. I'll come get you. I was like, amazing, great, love it, thank you, mother. I still had to wait. I put my bags down on the bench, but I didn't want to sit on the bench because it was cold outside and that bench was metal. It was better for me to stay standing as well for all of my muscular issues and just wait until I could sit on a comfy seat and let my muscles finally release. So I'm standing there watching a YouTube video of another creator's experience at a convention. The video was supposed to be just about as long as it would take my mom to come pick me up from that station. I saw this one homeless guy who kept circling the station, and he was watching me the whole freaking time. He did this for nearly 20 minutes, and then suddenly he was gone. I didn't see him anymore. Okay, weird dude just disappeared. No. I hear a rough, gravelly voice come up behind me and go, hey, have you ever seen one of these before? I didn't automatically think this dangerous. I thought maybe I dropped one of my keychains or something and he was trying to return it to me. But I turn around and he's holding a rock that is bigger than his hand, and he's coming at me like this. I stepped back, grabbed the handle of my bag, then realized I had a second bag and realized that I wouldn't be able to so easily run away from him, especially since I was so tired from the convention. Normally, I can outrun these crazy people. I have experienced something like this repeatedly at this bus station. I actually used to live near that bus station and had to experience people like that about every other day. So, with my hand on the handle of my backpack, I realized that I could not run, and I was going to have to beat the crap out of him with my backpack to protect myself. He's still coming at me with the rock like this. I grab my bag, I went to lift it, and then he stops, brings the rock down, holds it out like this, and he goes, oh, no, I wasn't trying to scare you. It's a heart. Look, it's a heart. I went, and it's a rock.
It's a rock.
Oh, I know it's a rock. We'll just use our imaginations.
But it's a rock.
And I still have my bag in my hand. I'm about ready to whoop this guy's ass. And he's like, no, it's a heart. I wasn't trying to scare you. Look. I'm like, He's like, no, really, I wasn't trying to scare you. And he put his hand out and he's like, my name is Travis. What's yours? I quickly shook this man's disgusting hand. It was absolutely covered in all kinds of grime. It looked like he worked as a blacksmith. My father was a blacksmith for a living. I know what I'm talking about. To make sure I did not upset this man to the point where he would use the rock because he'd calm down a little bit, I shook his hand. But in my head, the whole time, I'm going, ew, 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 as well as run. Something else about this situation. The security officer was in his vehicle right next to the bench that this guy was coming at me from. This dumbass thought it was a good idea to try to attack somebody who was standing right next to the security officer. The security officer never got out of his vehicle during this situation, but he did glance up, kind of keep an eye on it, and then the homeless guy with the rock kind of wandered away after I shook his hand. Thankfully. After this, I was looking around at the other people in the area, realizing that there were a lot more homeless people there than when I originally arrived. So I moved to the bank that was across the street to be a little more safe while I waited for my mom. While I'm sitting on the garden wall of the bank, this little old Asian woman ran up to me, desperately wanting directions to a certain apartment building, but she didn't speak very good English, and I don't speak much Mandarin. But she could say the street name, and then she was saying the numbers in Mandarin. I understand numbers in Mandarin, so I very quickly looked that up on my phone, and then pulled a compass up on my phone and showed her which direction she needed to go. She was very thankful, and then was actually super surprised, and she's like, "Oh, you know Mandarin?" And I went, only numbers. Just numbers. And probably only up to 30, I think. But she was very impressed and very thankful and went on her way. Finally! My mother showed up as I see that homeless guy who still has the rock is coming around in front of me on the opposite side of the street and heading towards me. And he's locked eyes with me, and I'm like, oh god, oh god, oh god. My mom's car zips up and cuts him off from the crosswalk, and I'm like, drive, now we go. Yeah. On the drive home, I told my mom about the convention, and then when we got home, I showed my mom and my brother their goodies that I purchased while I was at the con. Now, I'm not blaming the con for any of my transport issues. Those have to do with RTD and Uber getting their ish together. I'm also not blaming the con for some of my crappy interactions with other cosplayers, because some people I think were honestly weirded out by my tremors because of my excessive muscle tension. Although I do want to say that they really need to make it more clear on if you're allowed to take pictures in certain areas or not. For the Artist Alley, they made it very clear that you are not, because they had a giant sign for it saying no pictures. With them being so strict of no filming in the K-pop room, there really needed to be a sign. I also feel that it would be necessary for their staff to be better informed, because I checked with a couple other people who actually managed to make vlogs at this con, and none of them ever got told they weren't allowed to film aside from in the Artist Alley, which makes sense. So that's why I wasn't too worried about showing most of the footage that I got at the con. I also wanted to say that I feel like the con could have oriented everything a little bit better. All of the really large event stations were really close together, and lines kept blending into each other so that we had to ask which line was which to know for sure we were standing in the correct line. And that is my experience that I had at Colorado Anime Fest 2025, just a one-day event. Has anyone else ever experienced a convention where they repeatedly get told they're not allowed to film? Please let me know in the comments, because I was so confused on this. So thank you for watching this video all the way through. I greatly appreciate it. And you can support me with those subs, comms, thumbs, and a ding. You can also help me out through Ko-fi. There's my website where I got the keychains and pins if you want to buy any. I also make cat ears and tails, so hopefully those will be up on the website soon. And welcome to the madness. She texted... My voice is going. Oh, nice. Nice. That just made a huge mess. I didn't even touch it. I walked past it. I dumped everything. I got a couple pictures of an I got a couple pictures nope. I got a couple pictures of an oh my god. I got a couple pictures of an Osmodeus